going to the static slide. And the main focus or main ideas behind is to actually expose to wider community how we here in Prague in R&D use Polarion, or how we actually develop our software use Polarion, and to basically outline the process end to the end, from the initial stages of project plan for the year all the way down to the sprints and down to the builds and releases, and also to disclose the more information around the depth and different components and different features we use. Again, idea here is that basically when you work with the customers, there's basically two approaches. One of them is that they have a set of business rules or business processes, and they tend to customize software to fit their business process, and this usually leads to more complicated setups as it deviates from the original or default settings. Or the other approach is to actually show them the right way or the better way of doing things, and to propose how they can actually adjust their business process and business rules to fit better into the process of the software, as it's based built on experiences on multiple companies or multiple ways and that were fed into this. So we'll kind of go through this presentations, and if you guys have any questions, do ask. We need hand raise to do that, and if there's not, I will leave a bit of time at the end to get to the specific questions, specific points. We're not going to spend maybe much time in going to much specific depth of the parts, but if you guys do have something that you want to take it off in the meeting, or you want to get into more depth, or you want to see something more specific or get some of our expertise in certain areas, then do let me know after the meeting, and then we'll do more of a separate session for this. And it's me here in David, so he'll be helping me out with any questions or anything else that might come up. So that's it. So we're going to get going. And hopefully everybody can see the screen. If not, somebody let me know. I will make an assumption that you can. So basically, it's, as I explained, this all comes up from the kickoff meeting, as I've been approached from a number of people, and they ask me, well, how do you do this, or do you do this in the team, or how do you implement this, or how did you figure this out? So I collected a number of the questions. It was easier to do one of these sessions than actually go back and forward to each individual. And also wanted to really give you overall insight into how we do things, because I think it's beneficial to understand the process and understand the things that we do and how we actually do that. The issues that we face during the development are not really just common to us. If you talk to some of our clients or potential clients, you will come up with quite a bit of same questions. So hopefully this will outline how we solve some of these issues or how we navigate Polarion to help us with. Or I'll touch base on some areas we actually don't use Polarion for some specific tasks that we need to do. So hopefully this will also relate to your customers, to potential customers, because the other development companies or firms that have experience with, they pretty much are facing the same issues. And the holy grail is, again, after shipping the software, and they need to align all the processes to do it the most effective way. Before again we start, just disclaimer, this is internal R&D information presented, because we're going to actually be looking at the live data that we use on CMS, so please be careful if you disclose any of this, because some of the work is still in the progress, and please be treat it as a sensitive information. If you do need some specific images or anything else for presentation purposes, then you can contact me and you can find the most appropriate way to get you that. So we're going to actually start, we're going to go from the yearly plan and kind of give you an idea of how we actually start the year. So for us, everything starts from around November, as when we work for the PM side organization to really figure out what we're going to be working on the next year. And this actually processes quite a bit of manual. Doesn't involve much of a Polarion itself, and it's kind of it's very early stage into this. But basically, we are presented with a PowerPoint presentation that outlines the focal point or the areas that we need to make investment into the next year. So it's kind of called a yearly plan. And how do we actually take this plan and what we do with it? I'll show you actually. I'll show you one of these first pages. One more disclaimer, we start using the easy planning feature as we finalize it for 2014. There is still some migration parts that we are working on and adjustments. So I will actually show you some of the easy planning features that we're utilizing and also some kind of the wiki pages that we developed for tracking early on. So you see something that has been done in the past before and how we're doing it right now. So we basically have plans for complete year created. So we start basically from 2015, and we do have 4 milestones that we deliver our product in. And again, it's on 3 to 4 months depending how it fits in. Or more specifically, for each milestone, we usually have around 5 to 6 sprints. So and each sprint is around 2 weeks for delivering the product. So we have hierarchical structures here set up for us that outlines this year, and it's subdivided into 2015. And then for each milestone, we have 4 different teams, and for each team, we have the sprints. So you can only see the current sprint and the next sprint that's been created. The 4 teams, just to kind of give you an idea that we have, out of these 3 teams, 3 of them are in Prague, and 1 of them is in Stuttgart. So Team C is integration team, the Benjamin's team, and they are also in our kind of process area. And the other 3 teams are core teams. They work in Scrum and they work on the product. There's also Omega. They're doing things a bit differently because they run on the Kanban. So I'll just mention them briefly at one point so just get an idea of it, but it's not going to be main focus on that area. So going back to this yearly plan, as you can see, we also set certain dates that we're planning or aiming to deliver on. This basically graphics should help us to track the progress through the year. As you can see, it's also here subdivided by different milestones, and we're just finishing the milestone 1. This should help us to really understand where we are with this process and how many more points or days are left to burn. So this is maybe might as well the point to touch base on what we actually use. We use days as a counter. We used to use Scrum points, but we transferred to days, and the reason for that is that we try something different to give it better relations to the estimations. And we've been probably doing Agile for 2+ years, if not longer, Evan? 4 or 5 years. So that tells us we have quite a bit of experience, and so we try new different things to actually do. Let me just check. Yep. Okay. So that's why if you see the days, that's what we use. Story points is more like the agile or Scrum way of doing things. But as I said, the reason we tried because we wanted to put more emphasis on estimation and trying to find better relations around estimations. The yearly plan for us starts with what we call the swag document. Now this is the first instance of what we don't use actually Polarion for. We actually use Google Docs for this or Excel. And the reason for this is our initial playground. And to just kind of explain it a bit, I'm not going to go in much detail here because it's not so much related to the Polarion system itself, but just to give you an idea of how this actually relates later on to our product. Basically, you can see here themes such as quality, such as shipping, maintenance, and tax, process, outstanding work, which pages, document management, traceability, and etc. So these are the projects that we have planned for this year. The yellow one is actually the ones that come from the business requirements. So this is actually what the customers are looking for. And these purplish ones are the certain things that we have to do to maintain our software and to ensure that it can be scalable and can be grown. So it's internal investment that we have to do. What's most important, interesting part around this and why we use it in Excel, because the SWAG document, it actually stands for Serious Survive as Gas, and it's meant to give us some idea of how we can actually balance work for the year. This is important to know that we don't actually need to estimate this or to make specific promises around deliverables, because this is way too early in the process to even understand the scope of the project, but it's used to actually make some relation and balance around what and how we should be working each milestone. And we do that through the t-shirt sizes. We have different t-shirt sizes. The reason why we pick the t-shirt sizes is that we try to avoid direct conversation rates between the base or the story point and the t-shirt size, so people do not make too much assumptions around deliverables. There are obviously certain ways you can make relations, but they're not mathematically calculated. This is the reason we do it. Basically, what comes out of it is per milestone plan, such as these ones you can see, and that basically outlines what each milestone will be working on. Also calculates the number of the sprints, the capacities in red, so that means we are overbooked as around preliminary ideas of how we're going to actually approach this. And basically we do this for the same milestone. We try to actually balance the different t-shirt sizes to be balanced around the same amount. So if you have 3 extra large, we're not going to put 2 extra large in the same milestone, but we're going to put in each in one of the milestones. And to go back to the original plan, we also have business priorities, which we use to ensure that we do this in the right order. We have also some risk levels and assessment, which discloses us how much we know about it, or how much is hidden, or technical issues that could be popping up in the future. And also have some descriptions, for instance, for defect, we usually allocate around 10% capacity per sprint to ensure that we deliver. As you can see, there's some stuff around the browsers about upgrading certain systems, about localizations, and etc. So I'm not going to again spend too much time around it, because this is just mainly for your FYI information of how we actually do the yearly plan and how do we actually start, but it's not related to the Polarion itself. So what we're actually doing then from this document, we try to transition all of this information into the plan. So as we're moving from one milestone to another, our plan should start mimicking the SWAG. Obviously, the plan is rarely same as actual what we deliver, because of the Murphy's law and everything else that happens in a process and change the different priorities. But basically help us to track and to be able then in point in time to understand how we're progressing through the year. Okay, so that's basically SWAG and why we use it. And again, just touch base in case you ask about the customers, and this is a very common question, is that around Agile, because in Agile we shouldn't be actually making promises on deliverables, we should be focusing on completeness or the marketable value of each feature, and do that actually based on the backlog. But the reality is that in any company they do have to make certain plans around execution and deliverables, and this is how we actually do it. So as you work with the customers or you work with different companies, you might have different ideas, but this is how we actually internally do it, and this is why we actually do it. I'll show you now, switching from this yearly plan. I will actually switch to next part, which is the creation of specifications. This is how we actually transition in. So once we actually start, the year starts, or hopefully even before we actually supposed to get into the year of the milestone, meaning of the new project, we create specifications, and we use our own requirements management, BOE, to do this. And we actually, truly use it and abuse it from the perspective. This is pretty much our only gathering way for this information. We don't use approvals, for instance, in this, and the reason for that is that it's a bit of overkill for us. I'm sure there are companies, there are teams that need much more formal way of traceability and tracking, but for us, we're a bit more loosely coupled on this perspective. And we also have a very short period between requirements and development start. So sometimes it's a matter of days, sometimes it's a matter of the weeks. This basically the reasons why we bypass approvals process. As for us, it's a bit of too much of a bureaucratic part to use it. As you can see, the part about specifications, the number of people working on it. We have our internal product owners, project managers that actually work on this. They work with the PM side of the organization. And they work with Jan, who does the UX, to actually create the mockups and to create kind of the flow of the usability of how something should function. What I'm actually showing on the screen is actually rich pages. Oh, yeah, reporting specifications, aka rich pages. This is something we are working on right now, and it's supposed to de facto kind of replace the wiki in a way for modular components that can be added, managed on each page. So I'm not going to go into much detail about the feature specifically, but just so you get a bit of sense the amount of information, how we actually collect this information to the specifications to deliver on it. We have a number of epics related to the features. We have a number of discussions and changes how we actually do this. We're trying to keep, as for instance, Rich Pages project, to have probably multiple epics, as we do not want to have, for instance, epic that will span across multiple milestones. Our preference is always to have smaller components, and our preference is again to have a project that we can finish in one milestone or smaller. The Rich Pages is unfortunately one of the very big projects that will take on 2 milestones to complete, and therefore it's kind of a subdivided into a number of the components. But the even smallest component is the user story that outlines the specific specifications around it. And again, I'll show you a little bit later about the backlog and stuff we do. We utilize it more and more, but we do have more of a kind of off and on settings when we decide what should go in. We obviously have must-have and should-have that are planned for the release and planned to be included into development. And then we also have nice-to-have features which usually drop off due to focus on the backlog of getting the major components in. So this is, as I said, one of the user stories that, one of the projects that is still in progress. And I can actually show you the easy planning one is actually this is the system we are seeing right now, just to get an idea because this project has been completed around how we gather specification and executed on it. Now, in a perfect world, creation of specifications should start at category development and well ahead because there's quite a bit of work to do that, and it's quite a bit tedious work to collect all the requirements and to understand it. But in reality, it's actually, for the way it's actually happening for us, we do probably get a substantial amount of information earlier. But this is the live document for us while it's in development. So what that means is that specifications are actually changing inside of the milestone that is planned in and also inside of the sprint as the things do change and we do figure out additional functionality that needs to be added, or we might hit some technical problems that we're trying to avoid and have to make different changes to it. So this is, again, this is the easy planning requirements document that we use to build the features that we have. And again, it's basically outlining content and context of the things that we need to develop and we need to do. As you can see, majority of things are verified, done, and completed in. We also have, as you will see later on, some additional feedback stories. So, for instance, So we do not forget about the features we develop. We have some limited capacity in, and we do trying to make some enhancements or some adjustments into the process also. So this is how basically, again, it starts around the milestone planning. So it basically starts from the swag. We look at the projects, we assign into different milestones, and then from each milestone, then we start developing the specifications for each project. One of the POPMs in the R&D team owns it, so they're responsible to ensure that we have a good communication channels with key stakeholders, such as the PM, such as the PSOs. We even started expanding out to the customers, so this is to be able to truly relate to them and to understand what is required, and then to be able to work with these people to create the specifications, to ensure that all the design, the UX is prepared. And then as we go through the process of the milestone is to make any adjustments or any tracking on it. So I'm going to actually show you one more thing that is outside of the Polarion that we are using. So I'll show you, we looked at the rich pages document, so I'll show you one thing that you also have to do, and it's a very common thing for us to try to understand the deficiencies into the project execution. So this is actually export from the rich project, a rich pages project in Polarion. So I'll just basically open all the user stories in it, and I did the export of it. And the reason why I did it is basically the calculations at the bottom is to try to understand the health of the project or how it's actually moving along. So for instance, in this case, we can see that initial estimates were for 320 days. We already up on 340 days, which remains 224, and spend 116. So we are over the budget on 20 days, around 6%. So this actually helps us to understand not just the standing out, but also the potential risks of the features being delayed and how we should reprioritize features or how we should manage a backlog and scope to ensure that we actually either deliver on the time or put more resources on this project. Also did a bit of pivot table here to indicate what actually is in which statuses there are. So for instance, for me is in this specific project, even it's only by 6% off, it actually gives me higher risk because it's only around 20 plus user stories verified and completed with around 120 outstanding. So use this type of information to really understand the health of the project and how to actually manage it. As I said, this is again one of the instances where we take the extra step outside of the Polarion to pull this information and to basically post-process it or massage it in to get more specific results out of it. So I'm going to go back now and to talk to you a little bit about once we create the user stories and once we have, let's say, components, what actually happens next. So in this aspect of it, so which pages, I can open the user story. What we do is once we have this preliminary kind of projects set up and we've broken down to user stories, and this is actually done with the combination of product owners and developers, we actually try to do the estimation. And for our estimation, we have mainly three fields that we track, and we have here initial estimate, time spent, and remaining estimate. We actually implemented this, I think, a year ago, and the reason for this is that we're trying to do some, again, post-analysis, as I showed you myself, to try to understand and see if there's a certain pattern to it. So, for instance, this user story is estimated at 3 days and hasn't been started yet. And you'll see later through the presentation, as things start, we're going to see this time spent increasing and remaining estimate also either decreasing or staying same or increasing. So what that means is that at any point of the time, we can actually figure out if we are under or over the budget for each user story. As we do never change initial estimate. Once we set it, we leave it as it is, and then we only change the time span and remaining estimate. And then, as you see later on in presentation, these things variate, and they come with some interesting patterns that we're trying to observe and to accommodate or adjust or learn from it. The estimation process, it's tedious process. It takes quite a bit of time. For the larger project that, let's say, longer than one milestone or around one milestone, it would probably take us around 1 to 2 days to do the estimation. Reason for this is that estimation is not so much about producing a number, it's about people having discussions about the future, figure out the best way about doing it, asking the right questions, and truly for the whole team to understand what they need to do. So this does take some time to do. And what we also do, as we get more into the sprint management, we revisit estimations before the sprint starts. And the reason for this is to see if the things change, if we learn already something on working with this project, and how does this actually reflect the estimates. So what that actually means before the work commences on something, we do have a couple of reality checks in the place to see are we actually still making sense around this work and what we're planning to do, or do we need to make some additional adjustments or anything else that needs to be done to the project to either we manage the scope or increase the resources to deliver on it. One more thing to note about this is to that in either way it's important to have flexibility of changing of requirements. But in the same time, it's also important to put time into understanding what we're building and why we're building it. So this is again the reason why we lead this process as long as we can, and we ensure that the specifications, let's say, are ready pretty much to the last moment it goes in. So it's almost like a JIT, almost like a just-in-time, where we ensure that we have enough conversations in, and then we try to log the user story as it enters the sprint, and then to ensure that it actually stays as it is, meaning that we've had enough discussions, enough conversations about it to the sprint to understand how we're actually going to do. I'm going to show you, this is one of the release pages. So I'm going to show you the old one. So this is from 2014, MS1. And just to get a bit of perception of how we set it up and how it looks like, it's on the wiki page. And then I'll show you after that what we transition into the easy planning module. So we have, for instance, the important aspects for the milestone. We tend to use the more, I would say, a burn up versus a burn down chart. This is to ensure and to understand changes of the scope. As you can see on the either burn down or even the one below burn up, there is an increase into the amount of work is done. And this is important to understand as to if you're trying to make an estimation of delivery, you try usually to keep the scope same because this is what your estimations are based on. But as you can see, in a lot of cases, this is not feasible. So in a lot of cases, the estimations go up and go down. And this is mainly a result of the bringing of the backlog or reprioritizing different features or cutting the scope or increasing the scope. So this is one of the typical release pages for us. It's important for us to know the dates where something needs to be done. I'll talk a little bit later about the feature-free, scope-free stabilization period and those aspects in. But just kind of give you an idea of it, how the stuff is set up for us. You can also see here, for instance, CNS rebuild. So there are work that we have to do which is not directly related to the customer, but is related to either our operations or to different upgrades and updates that we need to do. So here is listed of different epics that we're working on. And you can see here one interesting aspect is that how we track what is done for us is very important target release. So you can see 371, so this is 2013, 2013 is SR1 is 371 and 372 is SR2. So for instance, for easy plan, you can see there's a lot of, or some of the user stories were finalized and done for the SR1. And you can see one was done for SR2, which is alpha test, media code, which is some additional adjustments. And there's actually one that is actually preparing for the 381 and it's also defect fixing for the easy planning. So again, you can see the release here, that project even has been finalized, there's still some aspects of they persist through a number of the releases. And to the grooming, as you can see, there's some important items that were dropped off the paper because of the scope changes. The time points for us, we do this counting of the sprints. So just to give you an idea, we're currently sprint 183. There are some sprints that are shorter or longer, and this is mainly related to some statutory holidays or Christmases or to adjust to finish, for instance, sprint at the release. But I would say 9 out of 10 sprints is set at 2 weeks. And what it means 2 weeks, so if there is a statutory holiday and all that, we still keep it at 2 weeks. And we usually do the sprints Tuesday to Wednesday. We used to do the Monday, Fridays, and start. We switch to Tuesday and Wednesdays because when these people take time off, it's usually on Fridays and Mondays. And you do want to ensure that you have people up for the planning and assessment meetings. So these are just, again, a different project that was done. We're not going to go much in detail. So you can see there's a pattern here in how we track and how we do things. Yeah, so this is the previous way it was done, and we are migrating now to easy planning. So again, we want to have the dates and understanding when and what needs to be done. We want to have some kind of chart to understand the progress and to see how we are working on. Another important thing in Agile for us is not so much, again, about estimations and the progress, but also the amount of user stories that are open, closed, or they need to be somehow managed. Reason for this, we want to keep a minimal amount of user stories in progress because that's unfinished work. As you see to the sprint and how we do that and get more specific, we try to work on minimal amount of user stories that utilize maximum capacity of the team. So basically to ensure that the whole team is working in some kind of order on delivering the let's say the end of the sprint. As I showed you earlier, the way we're set up, we have again 4 teams that are working on the yearly plan. And here you can kind of also get a bit of understanding for the current milestone, how much more days they're left with of doing and what is outstanding for them to do. So this chart should give you a bit idea of how they're tracking up per team. And again, as in the previous ones, we have a bit more specifications about each project. So this one's, for instance, document types and workflows. And again, we use the same patterns in the target release to indicate what needs to be released. And you can see here again, initial estimation, remaining estimates, and time spent indicated here as I stated before. And as I said, it's an interesting aspect of it. For instance, if you take this look at this one, the highlighted one, that one is basically what the initial estimate was 2.5 days. And it was only it was already spent 4 days on it, so it was overestimate and it was remaining just about 4 hours. We don't usually actually go into the hours, we usually go on around half days, which 4 hours is half day, around 8 hours of work. So these are the, as I said, the different setups different projects that we are working on. And as you can see, the major stuff we always try to track is for the version for target release to ensure that we have a clear understanding what goes in which release. And there's always some leftover work or maybe some additional adjustments that need to be set into the different milestones. We don't do, for instance, branching for people who is interested in more technical level. We tend to do it simpler in a way that we only have one branch, and when we get to this kind of transitional period, when we're trying to lock the code, we would create another branch. So let's say in our case it would be 382, and from a certain point, any development will go into this branch. The issue that we find, and this is normal again, is that we have kind of live two branches for X amount of weeks, and there's some discrepancies that happen in it because some stuff that goes into 382 might not, some stuff that goes 381, such as the late minute defects, might not be automatically migrate to 382, so we need to do some merges afterwards and some testing to ensure that actually all the branches are in line and you don't see any discrepancies afterwards. So again, this is it about the milestone planning and how we use it. We still need to make some additional adjustments to easy planning pages. But it should basically tell us for each of the projects the standing and overall execution of the milestone if we're making for the release, or if we are running late, or if there's a potential issues and problems in and around it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is that we'll move into more specific parts. So we're going to move into more of a sprints and to more kind of execution phase. And we're going to talk about how we actually develop and the things that we use in Agile to build a product. So basically, we do, as explained earlier, let me just do it again. As I showed you, we have the hierarchical plans, 2015, so 2015 MS1, and then we have teams. So basically, each team has also its own plan for the milestone, as is open here, for instance, for Team Pi. And you can also check how the team is progressing and if they're actually making it through. The child plans are the sprints itself that they did in this milestone. So this milestone has 6 sprints. And we are basically halfway to 183, and then we have one more sprint before the release. And again, the release dates are set here. So might as well I can explain it to you what actually this means. So the start date is the obvious one, so we started a bit after the GA. The feature freeze date is usually will be in this case 183, so it's usually 2 sprints before the release, and it is date when we stop developing any feature work that goes into the release. Reason for this is that we want to keep around 1 sprint for any feedback or for any adjustments needed to feature, or any QA to catch up on it and to ensure that there's good quality around it. We actually implemented this maybe again a year and a half ago, and we did not have it. We have only code freeze, which in this case is sprint 184, which is used for final test passes, overall test release test, and then on the shipping and packaging the product. So we wanted to do this because we wanted to put a bit more space between the release and actually finalizing the feature. We usually have 2 kind of feedback pools when we work on a feature, alpha and beta kind of feedback, which alpha will be our internal mainly feedback, so something we're actively working on. And we actually have always daily build, or depending on which stage of the release we are, we may have weekly build. But we always have the latest code deployed on our production, which is CNS, as you can see it here. And we are dogfooding our own environment in a way of using it, and we also collect any feedback or any issues that we have, and we're trying to fix them as soon as we can. The beta feedback should be mainly called for the after release, after the service release, where through the early access program, customers can actually try some of these new things they've been working on and provide us with some feedback that we can implement it in at later on stages of the service release. If we're done in the GA and for some additional stuff that we're going to be planning or anything else, we can actually still plug it in into the SL1 for the previous GA release. Okay, now we're going to actually go into a bit more of a sprint now and sprint management, how we do. Okay. So, as I said, current sprint for us is 133. So this is again for one of the teams. This is our sprint board. Again, we are probably 3/4 of finalizing it. There's a couple other more elements they want to put on this board that are not present here, but I'll explain it to you a little bit of what actually is presented here and what it actually means to us. So the most obvious one is on the right here is the burn down chart. This basically tells us graphically how we're progressing. As you can see, the weekends are included here and also statutory holiday. In Czech Republic, we had last Thursday was the day off, and this is why it points to a flat line. As you would expect, that nobody would work, therefore there would be no things burned. So it's very common to see very flat starts at the beginning. This one's a bit more flat than you would expect on the other pages, and if you look some previous sprints. And then as the sprint progress, you would expect it to start coming down. The reason is for the flat start usually is because there could be some leftovers from the previous sprints. It takes time to get it going. There might be some ongoing discussions around how to do something. So therefore, it does take a bit of time to actually get it going. Also, you can also check at real progress, and relative progress. And again, these are basically to give an idea of how we're progressing and how we should be moving along. Right below it, we have something called the last 5 sprints outlook. And this basically gives us some kind of information of the previous 5 sprints for this team, how well they did. You can see for 183 to 139, we usually calculate the capacities. Then whatever is the plan is in days, and then what is left remaining. So we would like to have 100%, obviously, sprint completion like we had in 179. But realistically, it's a low probability as there is always something in addition that needs to be tested, or that team needed to work on multiple items because there's too many people working on the same item. So therefore, one of the items may not be completed. To give you an idea of the size of the team that maybe relate to our customers or how they do it, we found at least for us with that setup is around 45 developers per team and around 2 QAs. This is kind of gives us the most optimal way of team working on a feature, and at the same time not stepping over each other or working on too many things, or sorry, too many people working on too little things, or the other way around. So this is kind of the reason why we set it up this way, and so far it's working best in our case. For the different companies, based on type of the project they do, based on type of work they do, and release cycles they have, they might choose different settings. As I said, it really depends from the team to team. Capacities. So capacities we use mainly just for reference, just to give us some ideas of how many people are available to the sprint. Reason for that is because, again, we have cultural holidays, people have holidays, and there's different things that they happen during the sprint. So this is basically to outline what we actually expect of team completeness to be set during the sprint. So when we do have a planning meeting, we first collect the capacities of the team, where we ask the team how many days they're going to be working, if anybody's taking holidays, if anything extraordinary happening. And based on that, we're trying to conclude the capacities. And from that, taking into consideration, because we are actually still trying to collect more appropriate velocity that we can actually average it better, we use the capacity combination of velocity to try to understand how much work should we plan. So for velocities in this part, we can tell around the number of the days they're planned, and how much was actually remaining the different product, or actually how much they can do. So for instance, this team is a period around 25 to 28 days is optimal capacity velocity that can continue for the sprint. Then the way it's done is based on the backlog, and we'll visit our backlog a bit later in the presentation. We popped the most important user stories for each team, and each team is usually working on one specific feature. Plus, they have additional tasks such as defect, localization, and anything else that let's consider the maintenance. So the team is basically sitting in the same room with the product owner and Scrum Master, and they popping in each of these items into the sprint plan. And as they do it, that we do one more round of estimation before we actually commit to this. So we go to the user stories, we check to understand, for instance, on this one, of what is actually required to do. There's acceptance criteria prepared for it. There could be drawings also added to this. So this should be pretty much clear to each person of understanding what this user story constitutes. This is actually a very good sample of one of the user stories that went quite a bit bad. As you can see, it was estimated at 12 days, and we've actually spent 30 days on it. We noticed in one of the patterns is that usually the higher the initial estimate is, the higher discrepancy is from time spent, because usually means is that if you have a large user story, it's very hard to estimate it due to the number of complexities that go inside. So for us, one of the learning lessons is to try, instead of having 12 user story, which usually don't have, is to try to keep them in smaller chunks wherever is possible. So this is again one of the samples of the user stories that we use into the process. One more thing that we do during the sprints, and we'll touch base again on more execution in the stand-up meetings, we do the separate estimation for that and QA. The reason for that is that we have dedicated people who do development, who do the QA. Some companies, some teams are more flexible on this than others, meaning that they have a understanding that developers can also participate in a QA process or vice versa, and therefore they might do one estimation. We used to do one estimation, one number for both, but it was a bit more trickier to follow actual execution of it and understand the why we did not complete it, because capacities were not same for the QA and development, and therefore there could be issues one catching up with another. One thing that we do during the startup meetings is when we check on the progress of user stories, we do ask people is how much they believe they progress and what is left to do. And then we always update right here on the top time spent and remaining estimates to reflect this. Again, this gives us a better idea and better perception how we're progressing and if we need to make any additional adjustments to it. So for this specific one, as you can see, there's a lot of tasks, user stories, and some defects done to complete it. The way that story is usually processed inside of the sprint is that once developers will start working on it, they'll create a number of the tasks that they would manage inside of the sprint. We don't estimate the tasks. Tasks are, like as you can see here, are mainly used to understand the progress of the user story as it goes through the different stages. We also use here, you can get basically remaining estimate and time spent understanding of the completeness of this story, and also to understand what's been completed or not. We tend to go top down, so you would tend to see on the top user story progressing much more to the right than the ones at the bottom. And we basically have 5 stages of process. So one is open, which is basically taken into the sprint. In progress, meaning that the workers have started working on it. Awaiting code review. So we have a code review process. So you might see some items awaiting review getting stuck in this space. And then once it passes the code review, it goes to the done, where it gets then tested or anything that is required to ensure the quality of the user story or the task completed, and then moves to verified, where the product owner or whoever's the owner of the story has to close it by verifying that they got what they basically asked for. So this is again one of the very common sprint boards that we have that actually in progress right now. As I was saying a bit earlier, we also have specific defects user stories that they deal with defects backlog. We have certain ratings or certain levels that we're trying to achieve, and we follow this through by ensuring that around 10% of capacity is always burned on the defect as we go through the sprint. And we have issued backlog, which I'll show you a bit later with other backlogs, and we pop it from there from the top and we plug it in here, and then we assign it. So for us, the defect is mainly based around the time. So we don't estimate individual defects. We estimate just the amount of time you're willing to spend on the defect. So we set here point around 10 days, and this is what we'll be processing it through. So let's say we open one more Teams backlog, the current one 183, just to see the difference again. You can see again the flat line on the top and starts decreasing in. And it's pretty much the same story of the things that we're passing through the sprint, and they're moving along majorly from the top down. As you can see, the user stories on the bottom are a bit of, I don't want to say worse condition, but in less processed condition than the user stories on the top. To give you a better idea of how it actually looks like once it is completed, let's click on the previous time point to show you at how this sprint was finalized. So once we have acceptance meeting, which happens on Tuesdays, we basically have to the end of the day to clear up any current sprint, and then it's basically set in time so we can actually reflect on the status as it was left through. So this one, as you can see, was not completed, as there's a number of the user stories that were open. And some of these ones that you see, this one was the one that was estimated quite low and expanding to the larger scope. So this is, again, a possibility of happening. And what we do try to do is we try to complete as many user stories as possible, or to leave minimal amount of user stories open. I think this one was around, sorry. This one, I think this one open is around 86% completed. As you can see, there's some of these 69. There's also one on 92% completed. Let's look one more. Okay, so this is basically one of the completed ones. And again, you can see there are some that are left open. Mainly they're left open on QA. The reason for that is the QA is on the last process that goes through. So we are usually left with one or two user stories that not get a chance to get completely cleaned up and tested. And we do not allow anything that has not been tested to be verified. So that means that each user story has to be tested and has to be verified for our process. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about sprints. I'm going to make just a quick switch now to Omega team. For people who don't know, the Omega team is one of our teams that it is mainly focusing on the customer demand and or any escalated defects that need to be released to patch for certain customers. They work in Kanban fashion. What that is because it's better suited for this processing work. And they basically have the Kanban board here, that moves from the left to the right with the set for each of the processes, how much they can pop in and how much they can manage at a time. And as you can see, for instance, this is instance the one in red where the limit is 2 and there's actually 15. So that probably means the QA is following that on testing this item and pushing it from done to accepted by PM, meaning as verified. So this is just again one of the sample of the different ways to manage and track information between the teams. As I said, not necessarily everybody likes Scrum or works in Scrum. So again, this is one example of the way it actually works in a Kanban fashion. So we talked a little bit about information. Estimations are done prior to prints. They can be done on preliminary estimation, which is where the overall big epics gets evaluated, or during the planning meetings before the work is accepted. It's team's responsibility to say when they have enough work, so they measure the velocities and capacities, and then based on estimations, we ensure that they fill up sprint with enough work that they can manage. Daily stand-up meetings, we have them at 10 o'clock every morning, and basically these meetings are used to understand the daily progress. What we use our sprint boards is to basically check on the progress of each team and each individual and try to understand where they stand and what is left for them to do. Conversations usually start with what have you done yesterday, what was the progress done, what were issues that you encountered, and usually finishes up the conversations about individual or about user stories, that what is outstanding left to do and how do you plan to complete it. And these majorly are noted into the comment field as we collect some information around the progress of the user stories to expect that's indicated here. Progress of the sprint necessarily that's how we track the code reviews. I'll touch base just a little bit about the code reviews because there's a number of people asking us about it. We implemented this again last year. We have the coding standards that are put in place that everybody has to understand from development and comply to. And then we have the group of people, as they're listed here, some of the senior developers who are doing the code reviews. And code reviews are tracked on each submission to the subversion as it relates to the work item, and then it triggers notification that there is waiting something for the code review to be processed, as you can see here in waiting for review. And then we have a rule that usually if there is a senior developer or reviewer available in the team that code comes from, that they should review it. If it's not, then any other reviewer can actually review the code and ensure that it actually complies. We try to clean this list up as quickly as we can. This sometimes does tend to grow larger, and sometimes it does actually come down to a smaller amount of numbers. And you can see the actual statistics here around the number of the reviewers. For instance, Stepan is the most, has most reviews, followed with Miroslav. And on the right, as columns, you can see the initial of different contributors that are doing reviews. This is integral process for us, so nothing can actually process from the from the waiting for code review to be done without the code review. And it has to happen on a daily basis because it actually is slowing down or stopping the process. Code reviews are done in Polarion itself. I believe developers use the code comparison to see the changes of the code. And if they need a bit more explicit, they also can do it to the Eclipse. The reason for that is the one rule of thumb is for code review is that code has to be clear enough that you can actually read it if it's printed on a piece of paper. You do not need additional aids of the IDE to understand what is actually written. So majority of the things are reviewed in a Polarion itself for the comparison process, and then if something more explicit or requires more depth or it's a more bigger of a submission, it can be done through Eclipse or it can be managed through this. And then also people review each other's code, so nobody can get the free pass even if there's a developer in code review without somebody else reviewing it for them. If anybody's interested actually about the setup or how we actually do this for their customers or for anybody else, then just please contact me directly because this will take some time and a bit more effort to show you in the details about the setup, and I can put you in with the right person to give you this information on this. Another interesting thing is that to touch base on the QA process, as I mentioned, that each user story has to be verified by QA. We use the front-end tasks also for QA processes to indicate as one of the tasks needs to be completed. Or we can use the test module a bit more explicitly is for the testing and depending on which task we do. We have quite a bit of different type of tests that we do in the process. They range from the functional test to non-functional test, and from the manual, meaning the verifications and looking for potential issues, validation for multiple browsers, to automated tasks, platform tests, performance tests, and we also growing capabilities into the UI test with Selenium often. So we have quite a bit of a large suite of different type of tests, and then depending on which test we execute and the time points also depends on it, we use a different settings for it. For instance, now as we're approaching the release, we'll do more testing geared overall passes, overall functional test, overall end-to-end testing, and then also after that, we would once we create the packages that install properly, documentation is ready, so additional passes that need to be managed and do. I will show you. Maybe this is an interesting one. This is one from the past. It's one of the bigger ones. The reason I want to show you this one specifically because this is one of the bigger projects. We did back a year and a half ago. We did the inspection of the DLE where we were facing issues with ability to expand our capability in the States. We need to do some replatforming. It's quite a big, large project. It's actually on 1 year to do for 1.5 to developers. And this is one of the kind of the test plans we did for such a big and explicit feature. And just to kind of give you an idea again that we're using the test plan modules and the test execution as I will show you to create more specific or test or regression tests that we need to test and to cover in our development. As I said, this one's for the DLE, and just to give you an idea of how we're using it on it. We also, as I said, test across all 3 browsers, so you might see notes around the browsers that they use. And as the testers work on the specific user stories, we're going to see the transition between to test to test it done to ensure that everything has been covered and completed. Okay, so we'll spend a little bit more time in the QA as we talk about the backlog and the test automation, and maybe it's actually a good point to have a chat about that. Before we do that, okay, so here it is. So this is to show you the automated tests that we have running. We have different types of automated tests that run. Some of them run hourly and some run bi-daily, so twice a day. We have builds running every hour, and depending on what type of tests, it depends how frequently they're being executed. So for the unit tests, they're outlined here, are executed every hour. So they're automated, so they get kicked off after the build. All the tests run, and any issues that have been discovered or failed is automatically reported in, and the defect is created and flagged. So we have complete automated kind of touch-free process around this, and in this case, for the unit test, we can see there's around 6,675 tests that run every hour. And this one is, for instance, one of the ones that was reported by XUnit. It was a platform test, and it was a failure, and this is how it's been reported there. This one was verified rejected, so knowing that happened under the certain circumstances, but we do actually check this test, and we do ensure that the tests are passing through. And as you can see, there's the comments around the conditions what actually happened around this failure of the test. So this is again one more additional tax that we pay on to ensure a good quality product, that we're not ignorant to any failures or any issues that we face and we have problems with. Platform tests are a bit more complex tests than the platform specific, and they run twice a day on addition of the unit test, so this way the number is larger. So this does include the unit test and the platform test as they're building. We're actually working now more predominantly this year on the introduction of test performance test based on J-profile and J-meter, which is the measurement of our system under a specific data set or specific loads. Reason for that is to truly understand performance of the system. You need more dynamic tests to do than just, let's say, test on one specific channel, one specific user. So we have some failures here, but this is due to our growing interest into this space and growing investment into space where we want to ensure that we have what we call the static coding analysis or performance analysis, dynamic performance analysis. Currently, we have a number of performance steps that they run on the low level, and they're executed on a specific function. And then they are analyzed, like in this case, you can see about the performance, if they are running faster or slower than expected. And we do analysis and when we do notice discrepancies. The way it actually happens is usually in any world is that as you develop more code, your performance will start dipping as it's more overhead on execution. So we use things to track and to notify us when there's issues on it, and then we usually get assigned to a developer who does more close investigation, try to understand the issue, and try to correct it through either addressing some code, some refactoring, whatever is needed in. There's always situations where this might not be possible due to requirements or due to setup of the system, meaning the business process we're trying to solve with it. But we do monitor and we do test for performance also on it. As I said, we will continue doing this on the static code analysis, and we're investing more time into dynamic code analysis where we should have better results and understanding on the certain conditions on it. We started a bit of this last year when we did the clustering, trying to stress test our system to try to understand where the limits are. So, for instance, we can have thousands of projects, we can have thousands of users trying to open specific items or saving to subversion. So we'll try to build a test that will simulate very extravagant conditions to try to get a better understanding what happens to the system under specific loads. And again, this is stress on load tests, as they're all performance-based. So these are basically, you can see the output of all the different tests that are running continuously on our platform, and it shows you one of the defects that were generated and imported in automatically by unit, and it need to be addressed and managed from our perspective. I think we do have pretty high level of automation so far into the QA space, and we're growing the capabilities of it. And in Polarion, it actually helps us to make it much easier, an automated way of doing it, so it does not actually require any manual touches to run around 9,000 different tests every couple hours on it. So we talked a bit about test runs. Let's just talk a little bit about the defects management that we do. This might be interesting for people to understand around the quality of our product and how we actually ensure that we have a good quality. The defects, when they do come to us, usually to support or different channels, are automatically processed and set around priority. As based on calculations, we do automatically based across several different fields. Let me just open one of the defects. Just a second. Let me see if I'm going to find a good one. So, sure. So this is the Polarion internal one. It's found by us. We have obviously defects that come from the customers, and you're going to see here this field a large amount of customers. And the way that priorities actually gets calculated is by taking mathematical calculations, number of the customers, occurrence, detection, walkaround, and severity into the calculation, and there's a mathematical way to calculate it and to assign it. Reason why we do automatic calculations in the Polarion of the defect based on this is that we needed a managed way to pre-triage defects and to give us some ability to focus on the most critical ones or the ones that require most attention to it. This works in a lot of great ways because it lets us pre-triage, but more importantly, we use issues backlog here to prioritize any or reprioritize any issues that we need to address. Again, even the mathematical pre-triaging is great. We still have certain escalation from other people or from the systems or from duplicates or repetitiveness that we see. And this we do sometimes override this automated calculations in to ensure that we put the right focus on the right defects. So maybe let's just open one of them to see it. So this one, for instance, is for save changes sometimes fails because of reverse quantum exception, so we have the dump of information. And now you can actually see the amount of the component this has been reported for. And you can see the relevance to the Salesforce case ID, and now it's very clear why this is the highest priority to fix, and we have the highest 104.5 priority for it. This backlog again graphic shows us about defects and customer defects. So all defects are the ones that are reported in the system, and the customer company, the customer. This also shows the patterns into the number of the defects that we find ourselves or reporting internally because we dog food and test our environment, and if the QA does find an issue, they log it against developers to get it fixed. And in the left, it shows you, for instance, in this, for each release, the number of fixed customer defects and all fixed issues that have been processed in. We're trying to remain around 80 plus priority of the defect that needs to be fixed. This has been going for a while. We were considering lowering it, but taking consideration of the growth of the code base and the user base, I think at this point we will remain around 80 priority. So this is what we use for the triage meetings. We have them weekly, and it's between the Andre Trazi, which is manager of QA, with some key stakeholders, and what they do, they discuss other specific issues. They group this backlog from the perspective of what the changing priorities are, and monitor to ensure that we're making fixing the right defects in the process. And this is again one of the ways Polarion, we can very easily manage this backlog and really manage easily process and what needs to be done and ensure that we actually have a good justifications around the things that we do and how we actually spend our resources on. When we already talked about the backlogs, I will just show you a couple more backlogs. This is for product backlog, which basically contains the feature list of the user stories that need to be worked on. So these are the product owners own this, and you can see they're scheduled into different sprints and different milestones, and they're in price order. And you can also see the target release of what needs to be completed, the team that owns it, the estimations, and other interesting information. This is very useful in understanding of what combined teams are working on and how this impacts on the backlog. And there's also per team backlog, so you can actually get a better understanding. So product owners maintain this, manage this, and it's utilized mainly on the sprint planning to showcase, to ensure that we go after the right investments. One more backlog to show you, it's actually internal backlog for the refactoring. So this has nothing to do with the customers, or it could do something with the customers, but these are the different things that we would like to work ourselves on to ensure that we have a good product to deliver to the customer. So some of them is about removals of certain old components that they're dead weight or they shouldn't be there anymore. It might be around optimizing some code base, or it could be also about simplification of structures like internal code base. This again to show there are multiple backlogs, and we usually try by percentage somehow to manage it. We said the defect is about 10%, and in fact we try to do around 5% if we can per sprint of this work to be completed and to be done. And probably the last thing, because I went through all the different pages that I wanted to show, is to talk about I'm just trying to find it. Let me just open it to trends. The trend chart. Yeah. So the effect trend chart. This people might find useful. This is a couple of graphics that tell us about trends about the defects. For instance, you resolve, you can see we're trying to always catch up, and we always follow a little bit after, and they discover we're trying to manage them and to get them out of the door. New versus closed, customer defects for a month, for instance. Shows the different peaks at specific time where they're highly reported in, and then us trying to mitigate and to catch up on it. So this is where the peaks are shifted a bit. So we have a couple of these reports that we utilize just for more information based and better understanding on it, and we also report on some of these KPIs to the management of understanding. So this was pretty much complete my presentation, because we went all the way from the yearly plans to the swag to the milestones to the sprints to how we actually execute and how we actually release the product. We talked about feature code freeze and we talked about defect management inquiry and how we use it, and about also about Scrum and Kanban ways. So are there any questions? If they are, please speak up. If not, we will end this session. Okay, So we'll end this now, and I'm going to actually stop it. If you guys have any follow-up questions or if you need anything, just please contact me and I'll get back to you individually. Or if you'd like to go into more depth about specific ones, and this will just an overview. Thank you.
Thank you.